So this weekend, I had an opportunity to be a wedding officiant at a fancy venue. And in this venue, I was standing there before the event started. And I noticed that the venue had a camera that was positioned behind me, looking down the aisle in which the bride was going to walk down. In addition to that camera, there were two monitors on the side so that people could see what was happening from this view. It was kind of an interesting setup, and I could see the monitors as well. Well, as I was standing there waiting for the ceremony to begin, I noticed that the camera was picking up a huge bald spot in the back of my head. Now, I sort of had a hint that there was a bald spot growing, but I had no idea how radical it was. And I was really taken aback because, when I look at myself in the mirror, I can't see the back of my head. So this was a huge surprise for me. And obviously an opportunity for me to extend love to myself. So that's the theme of our talk today, self-love. And right away, I'd like to drop a truth bomb for you or with you, which is to love yourself is to heal yourself. To love yourself is to heal yourself. Or if I could say it more in the first person and say it in a way that we might say it here in New York, to love myself is to heal myself. I'll invite you to repeat that with me just as we get started here today. To love myself together. Come on. To love myself is to heal myself. This is the truth bomb for today because this idea, this concept of self-love is very important. And so today I'd like to discuss why it's important, what are the benefits of self-love, and most importantly, how we can engage into a process of loving yourself. Just to begin to answer the first question, why self-love? Well, in the presence of self-love, fear and guilt and shame, the big negative emotions within us will melt away. Let me say that again. In the presence of self-love, fear and guilt and shame will melt away. And obviously, without these negative emotions of fear, guilt, and shame, then both the mind, the emotions, the body, the spirit will begin to function in a much more optimal way. And of course, when things are functioning optimally, this is healing. We are healed, right, is what we say. So, when you are healed, then you can look upon the world, look upon the other person, and see them in the same way that you see yourself. When you love yourself, you can see others the same way. And all the times that we are seeing what's lovable in you, you're also being able to see what's lovable in them. And let me offer, just as we begin here today, a little definition of forgiveness that enmarks this idea. A definition of forgiveness. Forgiveness is the act of seeing only that part of myself or another which is lovable. Let me repeat that definition. Forgiveness is the act of seeing only that part of ourself or of the other which is lovable. That part which is lovable, and letting the rest go. And I think that Jesus is in agreement with me because as I'm reading today from Mark 12:28 through 32, famous quote, he says, "One of the scribes came near and heard them disputing with one another, and seeing that he had answered them well, he asked them, 'Which commandment is first of all?'" So one of the scribes, one of the Pharisees is coming in and asking Jesus this question, which is the most important commandment? Good question. And Jesus answered, "The first is, 'Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength.' And the second is this," says Jesus, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." Then the scribe said to him, "You are right, teacher. You have truly said, he is one, and besides him, there is no other." So, dear friends, welcome once again. Juan Enrique Toro greeting you on this fine day. Thanking you for those thumbs up. Thanking you for subscribing to the channel, which helps this channel get around the world. And also thank you for those donations. For those of you who are making those donations, I'm so grateful for that. Thank you so very much. So here Jesus is expressing the first commandment, love God. The second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. Now what's interesting about that second commandment, I believe, is that it's not so much something that we need to do, but is really an expression of law. It is not so much a commandment as an expression of law. In other words, you will love another to the degree that you will love yourself. You cannot love others more than you love yourself. Now, what's interesting about that is that it also works on the inverse. The more we love others, the more we'll love ourselves. It goes both ways. Very beautiful relationship. So, the more we love ourselves, the more we can love others. It's a law. And the more we love others, the more we can love ourselves. This helps us understand what we need to do in order to help ourselves come into a deeper self-love, which is so essential in our world today, right? And so this is an expression of love, and so we've already sort of answered the question, why is it important to love? Well, Jesus is telling us that it's among the very top priorities in life. Love God. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love yourself as your neighbor. He's talking to us about spiritual law, and he's putting it right at the top up there for us. And so, what are the benefits? Well, right away we've talked about how to love ourselves is to heal ourselves. To love myself is to heal myself. Now, you want to be optimum in life, in body, mind, and spirit. Well, love is the key. That's why it's important. And when, as we said at the beginning, when we love ourselves, then those negative emotions of fear, guilt, and shame will begin to melt away. So this brings us obviously to the most important question perhaps for us today, and that is how. How am I going to improve loving myself? How am I going to improve loving others? Well, a few suggestions for us today. First of all, we need to be very aware that each of us is a unique and valuable creation of God. Some people say God makes no junk. And so you are a creation of God. You wouldn't be here otherwise. And you are valuable, precious, and unique in God's eyes. The psalmist in talking to God about, him looking or her looking at himself in the mirror, says, "I praise you because I am wonderfully made." Psalm 139:14, "I praise you, God, because I am wonderfully made." And in this, he is talking about, or she is talking about, what this means is obviously that we are made with purpose, with a plan, and that God delights in the creation that God has made, which is us, ourselves, just the way we are, including the bald spot on your head, which you need to extend love to. So that's the first thing of the how. We need to recognize that we are that valuable. The second thing might be to practice self-care. We have a body, we have a mind, we have emotions, we have a spiritual nature, and each one of them needs to be cared for. The body needs healthy and food in right measure, needs exercise, needs to be stretched and moved, and the body has those certain needs which I know you are aware of. The emotions need to be seen, and any repressed emotions need to be brought to the surface so that they can be seen and be accepted and be dealt with. The mind needs stimulation of a positive nature, needs positive goals and vision. And of course, the spirit needs attention to giving time for the silence, for prayer, for meditation, for contemplation, for inspiration, for hope, for faith, for love. All of these things are important to us. And of course, the third thing that we could say that we need is that it's important for us to set healthy boundaries. Right? We need to be clear on what's important to us. Things that I've just talked about, our own self-care, things that we value, things that we need, and we need to establish clear and positive limits. Be able to communicate those to the people around us in a very loving way, in a responsible way, making clear what our boundaries are. And we need to learn to say no. It's something that I need to learn more of myself. But learning to say no is part of setting those healthy boundaries. And of course, perhaps the fourth thing and the biggest thing of our how to improve self-love is in the camp of forgiveness. And specifically today, self-forgiveness, right? I'd like to thank Tara Brock for offering this acronym of something that helps us remember a process which can be very helpful when we contemplate forgiveness. And that is what she calls RAIN, R-A-I-N. And in this RAIN, what she means is to recognize those things that need forgiveness, acknowledge or acceptance of those things that need forgiveness. We need to be willing to investigate them. And then once we've investigated, brought up all the ways in which we feel we've come short, or the traumas or the problems that we face, they need to be nurtured. They need to be held in a loving space so that they can find the right place at the table of our consciousness, right? So RAIN is recognize, acknowledge, investigate, and then nurture. Nurture. A very beautiful way of trying to remember how forgiveness, both for self and for others, can work, right? So I'd like to frame that in a writing that Clarissa Pinkola Estes has written, which I find very appropriate and a beautiful writing. She says the following: refuse to fall down. If you cannot refuse to fall down, refuse to stay down. If you cannot refuse to stay down, lift your heart toward God. And like a hungry beggar, ask that it be filled. You may be pushed down. You may be kept from rising. But no one can keep you from lifting your heart toward heaven, only you. It is in the middle of misery that so much becomes clear. The one who says nothing good came of this is not yet listening. So the author is inviting us to turn our heart toward heaven. If you're knocked down, get up. If you can't, get up for whatever reason. Lift your heart toward heaven. And nobody and nothing can stop you from doing to that, even if you're being deeply repressed and keep down. Because those who aren't willing to do that are not yet listening to the ultimate message that life or God has for us in this situation. What she's implying here today for us is that, there is a way for us to get through those things that need forgiveness. In my case, I see this bald spot. I recognize that it's there. It's difficult to see. I want to deny it. I want to get away from it, but there it is. I'm looking at it in the camera in my case, okay? Now, this is a very superficial example, but I think it works. We recognize it, And then we need to acknowledge that it's there. Acceptance. Here I am in this stage of my life, and I have this bald spot on the back of my head. I begin now to work on that, or let's say investigate with some curiosity. I remember that my father had the very same condition, that he had chosen to get a hair piece that would cover it, and that I had silently in my heart judged him for that, made fun of him for that. So there's opportunities there for forgiveness for me, as you can see. And as I investigate that, I said, well, am I willing to go through life with that bald spot on the back of my head? Of course I am. It's not a big deal, right? I'm not talking about transcendent things right now. It's just a little spot on my appearance, my own identity of who I think that I am. I give thanks that, when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't see it. It's right there. It's in the back. Okay, I can live with that. So what I'm doing there is nurturing in that RAIN acronym that I was talking to you about. So I can come to some form of acceptance for that. And in similar manner, other things that I discover within me, I can recognize, I can accept, investigate. And as I investigate, I'll see maybe where this comes from childhood, from the past, from whatever false concept of self. And then as I investigate, I can bring it out to the light, and then I can bring love to it. I can bring acceptance to it. I can nurture it so that it is part of myself without being a fear, a guilt, or a shame. Right? Harmonize that. Love myself. And of course, as I look into the world, I'll see things about others that bother me. And what we're talking about today is that whatever we see outside is only going to be a reflection of what's inside. This is a basic metaphysical truth. And what's on the inside, we're going to see on the outside. So anything that we see on the outside, we can bring it to ourselves. What do we do with those things that we see in others that really bother us? Well, the same thing, to recognize it, accept it, investigate it, and nurture it. She talks about lifting our heart to heaven, right? And she says like a desperate person, open your heart to heaven. Wow. So, in New York, we have many opportunities to come across people who are indigent, homeless. They're begging on the street for some help. And sometimes when I see those people, I sort of shy away from it. I don't know how to act around them. I don't know whether to give money or not give money. But what I understand today, as I'm speaking to you, is that I need to extend love to them. I need to see those parts of them which are lovable and let go and discard any other judgments I might have about them. What can I see in a homeless person that is lovable? Well, I can see that just like me, they're trying to get through the day, trying to survive, trying to do the best they can, maybe reaching out for help, which is a beautiful thing when we open our heart. We can see them, I can see them lifting their heart toward heaven and being blessed. Now, whether I choose to give a donation or not, it is really an extra to what I'm talking about, opening my heart to seeing those parts which are lovable in them, just as I see them in me. I have a friend who has a lot of trouble seeing his emotions, working with them. Well, I judge him for that. I wish it was different. But if I'm going to see those parts which are lovable in him, I can see that this is a friend that I can trust. Maybe he's fearful about finding those emotions which are so painful. I can identify with that. He helps me remember that part of me. I can love that part of me because it is scary. And I can see that he is reaching his heart toward heaven. Wanting heaven to fill him with the absolute conviction that it's okay. That no matter what you do, it's going to be all right. Friends and family are always people that we judge harshly. Let's see those parts which are lovable in them. Let's focus on that and release the other. These days, sometimes we're judging politicians. We wish their politics were different. Let's see the good parts. Let's see the lovable parts. These people are trying to do the best they can. They're trying to make a better world according to their perspective. Maybe it's not a perspective that I agree, but at least that intention of trying to make things better is something that I can love because I see it within myself. Let me extend love to them, because as I do, I'm extending love to myself. And so it goes that we are constantly in a process of loving others and loving ourselves, opening our heart to heaven, asking that it be filled with love. And sometimes when we're stuck and we just can't, we say a prayer, "Dear God, please help me see what is lovable in this person. Please, God, let me see what is lovable in me. And let me release, surrender, let go of all those things which I judge or condemn myself negatively for." Because I remember, of course, that to love myself is to heal myself. To love myself is to heal myself. And of course, I want to be healed. To love myself is to heal myself. Juan Enrique Toro greeting you, friends, thanking you for that thumbs up, thanking you for the like, the subscription, and God bless you all for those donations. Really makes a difference. Signing off today, reminding you that love is the answer, and that life is consciousness, and that consciousness is life.